Conservatives like to claim they don't like Hollywood, but they definitely use the magic of cinema to paint a real-life picture of whatever they want real life to be. There's only so many times you can watch Tom Homan fight with his jaws to speak before you tune him out, so the Trump White House has gone Hollywood. Donald Trump, as well as the president of El Salvador, shared that video of a couple hundred people being arrested and deported to El Salvador to satisfy the promise of widespread deportations of violent criminal gang members, and also to hide that they appear to be ignoring due process in the courts.
First of all, these deportees, what is the status of the claims or the alleged claim that they are members of the gang? Are they all members of a gang? Do we know that?
That's a thing, Mika. We have to take the White House at its word when they talk about these nearly 300 men that they allege are part of this Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua, or TDA, without due process, without them going before an immigration judge, without the White House telling us what crimes these people may have committed or whether or not their tattoos merely linked them to this gang. It's really hard to know. I'll even point out during the Biden administration, they had a list of over 600 people they said may have connection to Tren de Aragua, but they said some of these people may have simply been victims who had to pay this gang or get a tattoo in order to survive. It was really difficult to see who exactly in that group would have been a high-level crime member.
In other words, the whole purpose of giving people due process, so that we're not criminalizing or punishing potentially innocent people, or giving the power of guilt or innocence to a few powerful people. Kind of like a fascist state.
Trump could use wartime powers that have not been invoked outside of the War of 1812, World War I, or World War II, to summarily deport people merely based on their nationality, and in this case, the fact that they're tied to Tren de Aragua. And once they get into the hands of El Salvador, Mika, they're out of the power of the United States, and that includes out of the power of this judge. So this is a case where if they defied this court order, and at the time, I listened to this Saturday night emergency hearing, a lawyer for the Justice Department told Judge Boasberg that he understood the order and would direct agencies to act accordingly. And that meant even turning around planes mid-air. Instead, we understand those planes landed and they got off and they were handed over to the El Salvadorian government, something the president of El Salvador has tweeted about and said, oopsies, too late, when he saw the headlines about the judge's order. So this is a real mocking of this order.
They mock the rule of law and the justice system because they're un-American. Maybe some of the people that were so upset over this fascist leader being accurately described as fascist can tell the country why ignoring the courts and refusing to reveal the crimes that each of these guys committed is not fascist.
Let's talk about the use of the Alien Enemies Act.
This law goes back to 1798. It's actually been invoked only 3 times, all of them during wartime, during the War of 1812, World War I, World War II. Now, what the law says is it actually gives the president very broad discretion to deport non-citizens in 2 scenarios. One, if there's a declared war with the other country. Of course, that's not the case. We're not in any declared war right now. Or second, if there's an invasion by a foreign government. Now, the Trump administration has argued that this gang, TDA, Tren de Aragua's presence in the United States is essentially an invasion. And they've also argued that even though this is a gang, they're sort of aligned with or inseparable from the Venezuelan government. The other thing that the Trump administration is arguing is that judges cannot even review the president's application of this law.
No declared war, but a constantly repeated talking point that there has been an invasion of the kinds of people that MAGA supporters have been scared into believing are born to be criminals. And once the balance of power in the country Donald Trump despises is exercised, he figures that pushing as much of their propaganda as possible will give him the power that he keeps claiming.
What we did, we removed terrorists. That should be a celebration. We removed terrorists from this country, and I stand by what the president did. I support 100%.
On that, how do you determine whether somebody is a gang member? What criteria do you use?
To various investigations. A lot of the ways we do it, it's law enforcement sensitive. I'm not going to share all that with you, but whether through social media, through the activities, through their criminal records here and abroad. So this was done a very. The review of this issue was at the highest level I've seen. And I think, again, I stand by everything we did this weekend, and I think the president keeping his promise to the American people. We removed terrorists from the country this weekend. I can't believe any media would question the president's ability to remove terrorists from this country.
Now, listen, the question was, how do you determine whether someone is a gang member? What criteria do you use? And the legal reasoning Tom Homan pulled out of his ass is various investigations, social media activities, and I'm not going to share all of it with you. That policy of not sharing it with you extends to the courts, too.
It doesn't look like you're getting support from the Democrats on this. You're going against the judges now. What's next?
Another flight. Another flight every day. The teams are going to be out there every day. Every day, the men and women of ICE are going to be in the neighborhoods of this nation arresting criminal, illegal alien, public safety threats, and national security threats. Lawrence, you're not going to stop us. We made a promise to the American people. The President Trump has made a promise to the American people. We're going to make this country safe again. I wake up every morning loving my job because I work for the greatest president in the history of my life, and we're going to make this country safe again. I'm proud to be a part of this administration. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
Nothing like declaring that they'll ignore the justice system to the laughter of a state media-controlled anchor who couldn't be more amused by the dismantling of people's rights, simply because they believe any and everything Donald Trump and MAGA leadership claim without any evidence or proof. It's similar to Trump voters that didn't think he'd come after their jobs or their families or their veterans' benefits. The problem with giving power to a fascist is that once you do, his thirst for more money and more power eventually shows up at your door. They'll call this revelation about targeting American citizens a sarcastic joke, like they always do.
They even break into apartments and rape elderly women and beat up elderly men, beat them to hell. And I don't want these violent repeat offenders in our country any more than I want illegal aliens from other countries who misbehave. And I say, and this is subject to getting it approved, but if they've been arrested many, many times, they're repeat offenders by many numbers. I want them out of our country. I also will be seeking permission to do so. We're going to get approval, hopefully, to get them the hell out of our country along with others. Let them be brought to a foreign land and maintained by others for a very small fee as opposed to be maintained in our jails for massive amounts of money, including the private prison companies that charge us a fortune. Let them be brought out of our country and let them live there for a while. Let's see how they like it.
Whoever he deems a criminal, just like whoever he considers a dishonest news source, like the AP, for refusing to go along with his make-believe game of calling the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. This is an exercise in normalizing their ability to bypass our judicial system to round up and imprison anyone they loudly declare as a criminal or an enemy of the United States. So are we starting to remember all the labels that he used on the campaign trail that meant nothing to supporters, like vermin, bad genetics, and enemy of the state? He's floated the same idea in the same terms that the accepting president of El Salvador used when bragging about being paid to house these deportees. Today, the first 238 members of the Venezuelan criminal organization, Tren de Agua, arrived in our country. They were immediately transferred to CECOT, the Terrorism Confinement Center, for a period of 1 year. The United States will pay a very low fee for them but a high one for us.
Let them be brought to a foreign land and maintained by others for a very small fee, as opposed to be maintained in our jails for massive amounts of money.
So no, they're not hiding their plans or their fascism.
It's clear, though, that Trump wants a fight on this, because when it comes to alleged Venezuelan gang members like foreign students who sympathize with terrorists, that doesn't have a lot of political appeal. So the Democrats are responding with high-minded constitutional principles of due process and First Amendment, while Trump is saying, well, let's make America safe again. This is the terrain they want to fight on. They'd much rather have this debate than talk about the sinking stock market, the chances of a recession. But the question is then, if the president ignores the courts, then how does the court enforce its actions? Because they're under the marshal's office. They have the marshal's office to enforce its rulings, and the marshal's office is under the executive branch. So we could be headed for a constitutional crisis.